Welcome to A Bit of Insight, where we explore how to live well, travel far, and inspire others along the way. I'm your host, Lisa Mosby, and if you're ready to design a life you don't need a vacation from, you're in the right place. What if legal help did not have a feeling of intimidating unpredictability or maybe financially out of reach for entrepreneurs? I'm your host, Lisa Mosby. Welcome to A Bit of Insight, where we talk about living well, working wisely, and designing a life that you don't need a vacation from. Today's guest is Darryl Shaper. He's the founder of FixedFee.Law. After 30 years in tech and business, Darryl stepped into the legal world with a practical entrepreneurial mind approach. Instead of leading with complicated language and unpredictable hourly billing, he focuses on business acumen, clear legal guidance, and fixed fees. What intrigued me most is that Darryl is not only rethinking how legal services are delivered, he's also living a life of his own design. He's a nomad lawyer, and that's how we connected. Being a nomad myself, I wanted to know more about how he does his business, how he pursues adventure and gets to live his bucket list every day. So thank you for joining us. And Darryl, welcome to the conversation.
Well, thank you. I love that. A life you don't need a vacation from.
I know. I want to talk about reinvention, entrepreneurship, and legal wisdom today. I gave up everything I own, but I find that I have some legal issues as a nomad, like where's my residency? How do I run my business? How do I pay my taxes? Those are some of the challenges that I face. And I know with your background, you've probably addressed all of these things as you stepped into this nomad lifestyle. Let's start there. How challenging was it for you to go on the road and be a nomad?
You know, not terribly challenging. My wife and
Okay.
I wanted to spend part of the year in California near our daughter in a beautiful
Okay.
little town north of LA. And and we wanted to spend part of the year in Colorado because I'm a big skier. I'm actually a ski instructor in the
Um,
winter up at Vail. So I like getting my ski time in and spending
yeah.
my weekends as an instructor. It's a lot of fun to me. And so and then it gets pretty hot in Southern California in the summer. So we come back to Colorado. I'm in Colorado now for the summer.
Yeah.
So that sort of 3 months at a time in each place really works for us. And we just typically rent an Airbnb for 3 months at a time in each place or some kind of furnished rental. Eventually, we'd like to get a house, but for now, 3 months in each spot is working.
Yeah. I'm Florida to Minnesota, but then I have an international flair to mine. I like to leave the country for a month at a time to go see other places and see other cultures. But similar. I was in tech for a long time. You had 30 years in tech, and then made the decision to start a law firm. How did that transition happen?
It was totally about AI, really.
Oh,
So my prior company, which we were able to sell pretty successfully to private equity, was in data science and e-commerce consulting. And data science is really the precursor to LLMs. LLMs or large language models are just data science around words, basically. It's predictive modeling around words. And so, knowing a lot about data science, when I saw the LLMs announced, I'm like, wow, this is really going to change the law. It's going to make the cost of legal services lower and really transform legal documents quickly. But when I went out and tried to convince companies to spend less money on legal using some of these tools, they were sort of slow to adopt it. So one of my friends was like, "Didn't you go to law school a long time ago? Why don't you just do this yourself?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I didn't really love being a lawyer. I'm not sure I'm gonna like it." But I opened up this little law firm about 3 years ago, and I've loved it because I'm helping small business people and entrepreneurs every single day get legal services at predictable, low costs and quick turn. And it fills a need that I felt when I was an entrepreneur.
And do you have restrictions? Like what states do you operate in? Can you help folks across the country? And then what is your primary focus? Because I might need some estate planning being, my situation.
Yeah, great. So hot tip there. And again, I'm super technology oriented and I like to save people money. There's a great website called trustandwill.com. That's how I created my trust for my family. And it's really quite easy and self-explanatory. I do offer a service where I walk people through it for 45 minutes and help them go through it because it can be little bit confusing. But that's the least expensive, most technology forward way I'm aware of to create a trust or a will. And then further, it's not just the will or the trust that you need, it's those other documents that are more important, like your living will, your medical power of attorney. And it creates all those documents for you in one quick session.
And I know many entrepreneurs avoid calling a lawyer, until something's already gone wrong. They're in the middle of chaos. Why do you think this happens? And how do you help them set themselves up for success going forward?
Yeah, so I don't recommend that. Number one, you asked a little bit about what do I do? I don't handle disputes of any kind. So I'm frankly not interested in getting into other people's fights at this stage of my life. And so all I handle are contract review and drafting. So I'll redline a contract for you when you've gotten it from a counterparty or draft a contract for you. And I also help with sort of general legal advice or business acumen. So, um, why do they do that? They do it because lawyers are exceedingly expensive and lawyers are extremely reluctant to give you any kind of forecast of what the project is going to cost you. So that's why I created the FixedFee.Law We help you generate a fixed, clear amount that this document or review is going to cost you. And so when I was dealing with lawyers when I had my last company, I was too busy to do the work myself. So, it was always slow. It was always a bigger bill than I expected. And it was, frankly, they created issues. It wasn't very pragmatic. A lot of times they marked up the document too much. And when I'd look at it with some legal acumen, I'd be like, wow, that's silly. That's
Yeah.
silly. So being pragmatic is frankly just as important as fixed fees.
And then what's the difference between fixed fee and hourly billing? Like, give me your insight on that. Why did you go fixed fee versus hourly billing?
Well, again, I just did it because I felt like there was a need, right? You want to
Okay.
know what something is going to cost you. And I actually have a number of clients where once we've established a business relationship, it makes better sense for them to just have me bill them on an hourly basis. But we started with fixed fee, built a level of trust, and then now they know. Because when you think about fixed fee, right, I have to get in a document um, or get in an assignment, understand the scope of the work, estimate that it's going to take me X number of hours, and then I build some cushion on top of that in the fixed fee that I put there in case it ends up taking longer than I think. So, in some ways, once built a relationship with me and trust that I'm going to be efficient, hourly could be less expensive than fixed fee.
Ah, perfect. And the nuts and bolts for me is let's talk travel. You describe yourself as a nomad lawyer. What does that actually look like in real life for folks?
Well, it's kind of interesting. Again, as we discussed, I move around between mostly Colorado and California. My law practice is actually in Texas. So I spend some time in
Ah,
Texas, but I'm a Texas lawyer. And so with contracts, you can assist people, especially if they have some connection to Texas with their permission, you can say, look, hey, I'm a Texas lawyer. Your contract may be Minnesota law, But the reality is contracts aren't radically different state by state. So as long as you understand I'm a Texas licensed lawyer and you're okay with that, I can review the contract for you. So that's kind of how that works. You have to acknowledge and agree that I'm not licensed in the state where you are or whatever. So I do work mostly with Texas people or Texas companies, but I support other folks as well with their permission.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm not sure I answered your question, but I
You
think I did.
did, you did. And I'm talking to those folks out there in our audience that might want to become more fluid, maybe snowbirds. Maybe they don't want to give up everything they own and go nomad. But how do they continue to work, have a professional career well on the road? What kind of technology is there? This is a wheelhouse for you. What kind of rules, laws, legalities are people going to run into? And then where is your domicile? You said you're a Texas lawyer. That might be where your business is located, but is that also your domicile? Is that your state of residence?
Officially, I'm a Colorado resident. I just use a
Okay.
UPS store as my mailing address, and then they forward that mail to me if I'm not in Colorado.
Sure.
So that's how I deal with that. I'm curious how you do it, but that works for me. Um, and then interestingly, I think it would be kind of interesting. My previous company in data science and my current company, we do a lot of nearshoring. So we hire data scientists in Mexico, Argentina, and Colombia. And then for my law firm, I have a couple of associates that are lawyers in the country of Colombia that do work for me. And I just do a virtual meeting with them every morning to go through sort of the set of work we need to get done. They work on things first, then I check it using AI tools, legal AI tools that I have.
Mhm. I'm technically a resident of Florida, but that was the last place that I owned a home was in Florida, and so I maintained my residency there as well as my car insurance, my medical insurance, and then for staff, I my former business, tech business, we had a couple hundred employees there, and once that was sold to a Miracle Fortune 500 company, I said, I don't want to have employees anymore. So now I work mostly with independent contractors, and it's primarily myself and a virtual assistant. And she's based out of the Philippines. And I also work with another company that supports young men and women from the Philippines, where we're educating them on how to develop their business, how to manage their business, how to make money and support their families. So I get a lot of reward out of being able to do that. And then, of course, locally, wherever I'm at, oftentimes I'll use subcontractors if I need projects done quickly, something that I can pass off to somebody to just take care of. Uh, Insurance, medical insurance, and car insurance, those kinds of things can sometimes be tricky for folks when they want to do this kind of work. What has your experience been around that? Are you having any issues? Was that ever a challenge for you?
Medical insurance is wildly expensive,
Yeah.
but thank God for Obamacare because now we can get that on the marketplace.
Yeah.
And I have some pretty horrific pre-existing conditions that would really put me in a world of hurt if I did not have the right to get that despite pre-existing conditions. So I do healthcare through the exchange, and while it's expensive, it's worth it.
Yeah, it's available. And I've checked it out so many other options. Even if you don't get subsidized, you can get insurance through there. Me, same thing. I had a pre-existing condition that kind of, as a solopreneur, caused me some challenges to find a company that would insure me. So,
Yeah.
uh,
One other thing that I did want to mention that I think is quite important for folks that may be listening is you mentioned you use independent contractors. My folks in Latin America are contractors as well. I strongly recommend that nomads be careful and thoughtful about using independent contractors where possible versus employees, right? Once you
yeah,
get employees, you're subject to many more laws, many more requirements. So as long as you can meet the criteria for independent contractors, at least for the first couple of years, as much as you can, avoiding hiring employees has reduces your risks and increases your flexibility.
And then you do you have an LLC for your law firm, or sometimes I know they go by a different kind of structure?
In Texas, it's called a PLLC, Professional
Yes.
Li Limited Liability Company. But this is also, again, it's hugely important legal tip. One of the most important things you can do as a digital nomad, as a startup entrepreneur, is form that limited liability company right away. Create a bank account. Don't commingle your funds. And the protections for your personal assets from having a limited liability company are huge. It's extremely hard to get past. It's called piercing the corporate veil and get to your personal assets. So if you've done well and you've saved money, even if you haven't, frankly, you want to create a LLC to protect your personal liability, protect yourself from personal liability.
Another one of those liability issues is car insurance. I'm on the road for thousands of miles traveling to different places. I've been on the road for almost a little over 4 years now, raising up your insurance limits on your automobile. Things happen. It's unexpected, but that is a huge risk. It is for any of us who are using the roadways. But when you're nomadic, you want to make sure that you have enough insurance and that the insurance company is going to handle anything that might come up. How about have you
Agreed.
addressed that? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I am lucky. I happen to have USAA. They're a great
Ah, very nice.
insurance company. And so, yeah, I just have been with them for many, many years, and they're great about changing the address to the UPS address and then working from there.
Yeah. I'm kind of curious, how did you know that you could still be taken seriously as a professional while living a more mobile life?
I don't think many people are concerned, right? I've hardly ever meet my clients in real life. We're talking on video calls just like this. I do almost everything. I use the camera. I talk to people. I've got a little bit of gray hair, so that gives me some degree of credibility, I think.
Mine's coming.
And yeah. And so I don't think most people feel like they need to come into an office. And honestly, like about a year ago, I was in some fancy offices, I won't name the firm, of a firm in downtown Denver with this incredible view of the Rocky Mountains. And I'm like, what? And nobody was in there, nobody in the office,
Um,
right? And I just thought to myself, what an incredible waste of money and space with these beautiful offices. And somebody's paying for that, right? You're
yes.
going to pay
Yeah.
way more money when your law firm has fancy offices. I'd say to myself, if I walk into somebody's fancy offices, woo, I'm paying for this. Why? Whereas my model is lean and mean, and therefore those savings are passed along to my customers.
And efficient. That's the word I use often is that we're so efficient because we have to be. Uh, Speaking of efficiency, what systems? Let's talk about systems. I have a big ring light. I do podcasts. I have a great computer. I've been toying around with a new phone. I've been on Apple products, since its invention, and it's like I think I might be switching away from Apple and moving more towards a Google Pixel because as far as the videos that I do, I'm doing nomad blogging, I'll call it, where as I travel, especially international, I'm doing photos and blogging, and the Google Pixel's really easy. Everything is stored on the cloud. It dumps to my computer. There's no uploading, downloading, having an Apple phone and a PC. So there's some challenges with some of the technology. How have you set yourself up with systems that work for you?
Yeah, I'm Apple, and I think I'll stick with Apple. Just, everything works well. I have an Apple Watch, so my
Yeah,
phone,
yeah,
rings on my watch instead of making a bunch of noise during phone calls and during conference calls like this,
yeah,
etc. So, um, I'm set up with Apple. My cousin happens to be sort of an Apple IT guy. So I engage him to deal with any IT issues that I need. But my son is very tech oriented. He works for a sophisticated tech company, and he for years and years had a Pixel in high
yeah.
school and was convinced that that Google was better, and it's
Yeah.
certainly bigger internationally. But my his concern when he went off to college and he's trying to text his friends, right? Apple makes it difficult to do a group text when you're a Pixel. I'm not sure if you're aware of that, but
Oh,
that can be a
no.
challenge. So it messes up texting with people in the US. So that's something to think about before you switch.
Sure. And I'm mostly on WhatsApp. I don't really use text features. In fact, my phone is never on, never ever on. It's always on mute. And like you, I do the Apple Watch, except when I'm in podcasts, because I don't want it vibrating and it, and your tendency to
Right,
look away. And
right,
it's like you're being
right.
recorded at the moment.
Right.
But I
Well, that
found that
shows you're an
because
international nomad because WhatsApp is the hack that gets around the Apple challenge.
it's kind of the go-to for me. And all the different companies that I work with as an independent contractor to them, many of them have Google calendars and they're Google calendars and they feed into one calendar. So when I started looking at the Apple phone, I'm going, let's see, I use Google Maps, I use Google Photo Storage, I use Google Calendars. There's not an Apple product on here. There's not an Apple app that I use that's only on Apple. And then do I optimize, the photos and getting everything to my computer so that my international virtual assistant can access it? So I can't get her into my Apple features, but I can get her into my Google stuff. So we really have to assess how are we living, and it's not optimal for me at this age to actually go learn something. I've always been on Apple. I don't really want to try something different, but I think it's going to actually create more efficiency for me in the long run. So I'm looking at habits. What kind of habits do you have when you're working on the road? Because, if it's snowing out and you have clients, it's sometimes we live a vacation type life. How do you stay consistent? How do you show up for work, on a regular basis? How do you use a calendar maybe to predict what your work schedule will be this week?
Yeah. So fortunately, because so much of my stuff is quick turn, if I know I'm headed out of town for a few weeks, I just slow down the amount of work that I accept in um, going into the week or two that I'm going to be gone. So that works pretty well. And then because I have these associates, they can stay on top of things while I'm a little less available. But one of the things I love is having a much more flexible life, right? So, like last night, I sent out some documents at 10 o'clock to the client, and I was working from 8 to 10, right? But I had been watching the World Cup earlier in the day because I was interested in watching some of the games. Um, and then in the winter, I love when you're a ski instructor at Vail, you get an $8 lunch on the mountain. So when I'm up in the mountains, sometimes I'll go up skiing at 11 o'clock, get an incredibly bargain $8 lunch at the top of the mountain, ski a few runs, come back around one or two. And that was a great break in the middle of my day. And so I just block those hours of the day. So, you know, I love the flexibility. And I think in the world we're in now with so much technology, I really encourage people to find that flexibility and go do the things you love or that are of interest to you. Um, in and flex your time. Work later at night, earlier in the morning, so that you can ski or watch the World Cup or spend time with family or whatever it is that is valuable to you.
Yeah. It's really possible now. There was a time where maybe not so much, but there's so much technology, insurance, places to stay with Airbnbs. And I oftentimes finding myself renting rooms from friends who are widowed or divorced, or, they're lonely. And so they would love to have companionship around. I can rent a room. It's a win-win for them. They're making a few extra bucks. We get to have dinner together, makes it more affordable for me to have that type of a lifestyle. So Airbnb may be a little pricey and out of some folks' range, But think about your scenario. I am also a camper. I love sleeping in a tent and waking up, even at my age, but I do cheat. I don't sleep on the ground. I use an air mattress. And I just love being in nature. And so nothing fills my cup more than waking up to the sound of the birds or, having coffee by the fire or what, in the morning and waking up and just the smells and the sounds that you get. So it feeds my life. Like I say, it really is a vacation. Every day seems like a vacation. Oh yeah, and I have to work and make money too. But do you think professionals are beginning to like question the old idea of what it's like to run their business, to work from an office, to have a regular traditional desk, not a folding table or a lap desk that I generally work off of, and being in one place? Do you think there's a shift that you're seeing at all?
I guess I gotta believe yes. Number one,
Okay.
I think the
Yeah.
rise of independent contractors in America is huge. So there are so many more people doing sort of the gig economy and finding different deals that they're working on. And if you're doing that, it then gives you the flexibility to move around. Um, and I think, as you talked about the credibility, I don't think people um, find that less credible nowadays. I think they're comfortable with people working from different locations, being international, etc. As long as you get the work done, I think people are fine.
Yeah. Here's where I want to wrap it up today, Darryl. What advice would you give a professional who wants more freedom, but is afraid that clients, colleagues, or peers might not understand?
Mhm. Well, I worked in corporate America for like 25 years before I started the last couple of companies that I've started. And I did some stints that were a little more entrepreneurial in venture-backed companies. And that was my risk tolerance. But what I would say is if you have the opportunity to try to construct a life that is more custom fit to your desires, please go for it. It's not as hard as you think to build a business. I'll help you form the LLC and get those first couple of contracts done, whatever it is. And I think it's worth the effort because the benefits to a life that's custom fit to where you want to be and what you want to do versus working for the man, I think it's worth it. And you might do super well financially or you might sacrifice a little bit financially. I would say even if you end up sacrificing financially, you can get back into the corporate world if you wanted to, number one. And number two, the sacrifice may well be worth it.
You might find that you can live on a lot less than what you thought you needed.
Yes, exactly.
For
Exactly.
sure. Thank you for indulging me and joining me in this conversation today. It's been fun diving a little bit deeper into your story and sharing a little bit more of mine.
No, pleasure. And go for it. Build a life that you don't need a vacation from.
Folks, Daryl's story is such a good reminder that our career can be more than being chained to a desk 9 to 5. It can be about creativity, freedom, clarity of purpose, and maybe the commitment to serve others. Who knows? All that speaks deeply to me, and it's in common with what I believe. After 40 years as an entrepreneur, I've learned that success is not only about what we've built, it's also whether the life that we are building still fits the person we are becoming. So, whether you're an entrepreneur, a professional, someone standing at the edge of reinvention, let this conversation remind you you're in charge. Go ahead and design a life that works for you and your family. I'm Lisa Mosby. Thank you so much for joining me on A Bit of Insight. Until next time, live well, travel far, and keep sharing your wisdom along the way. Bye, everybody. Thanks for joining me on A Bit of Insight. To get more involved with our wellness community, grab a copy of my book, Live Well, Travel Far, or to explore our travel offerings, visit the website at insightcenterforwellness.com. And if today's episode gave you something to think about, leave a review and please share it with a friend. This is Lisa Mosby reminding you to live well, travel far, and always follow your insight.